Hello and welcome to Rock Talk. In this week's episode, we're going to talk about the inclement weather procedures for Round Rock ISD, how we make decisions on school cancellations and delays, and how we notify our parents. Joining me today on our panel is our Director of Transportation, Mr. Fritz Klabundi, our Executive Director for Educational Support, Mr. John Yonker, and Principal of an elementary school principal, Gabby Nino. Thank you for joining us today on Rock Talk.
Thank you for having us, Corey.
And the first question is from Mr. Klabundi. Now, Fritz, your team on bus drivers and the bus supervisors do a lot of legwork in evaluating road conditions when there is inclement weather. Can you kind of speak to that process and what your team is doing when there's possibility of bad weather?
Well, first what we do is we start monitoring the weather a day or two out just to see what may be coming our way. And in transportation, our supervisor staff, including myself, we have teams that go out and check the roads. We typically start at 1:30 in the morning, starting to check roads and to see if we're starting to see the conditions that may inhibit safe travel to school, either on the school bus or for students walking or driving. And then what we do is I will have the supervisors and everyone that's out checking roads reporting to me, and then there's an abbreviated ELT team that I'm communicating with, letting them know what the conditions are and what we're seeing, and then decisions are typically made based on weather forecast and what we're actually seeing live out on the roads.
So as soon as there's a report of possible inclement weather, you're already in the zone, knowing that the next morning you and your team are going to get up and literally hit the roads and start to kind of monitor what the conditions are. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So what are the kind of timeframes and when decisions are made? I know the night before or the day before we're looking at weather at certain periods of time. From your perspective, when are the decisions being made in terms of whether we're going to if we are going to delay or cancel school activities?
Typically, we try to get together the evening before and look at weather reports. Historically, we've done it both ways. We've done it the evening before, and we've also done it the morning of. Sometimes, you look at a weather forecast the day before and the weather looks great. It's just going to be cold or below freezing, but no precipitation. And all of a sudden, 10, 11 o'clock at night, something moves in. And so basically what we like to do when we can make the decision the night before, that's great because it helps our parents to really schedule what's going to happen the next day for their students not going to school. Or if it looks like we typically, I don't recall us ever calling a 2-hour delay the night before. We typically wait till the morning to do that, just because that's a harder call than calling school. But we really like to have the decision made by 5 in the morning. We do have bus drivers where routes do leave out at 5:45, so we like to have that call made by 5 o'clock in the morning so we can communicate it out to the media and the parents know and all of our employees know that they don't need to get out in the weather.
So if there is a cancellation or delay, we're making the phone calls to parents either the night before or as soon as the decision is made. Oftentimes we're trying to make the decision the night before to give parents enough time to plan. We're posting things on the website, we're putting it on social media if it's canceled, and we're sending it to our local media partners as well as all of the email addresses that we have in our email database. On the campus, Mr. Yonker, what is the process for staff members, particularly at your experience with a high school campus, when it's called off? Obviously, the communications department is going ahead and notifying all of our parents at that time, but what is the role of a campus principal when there is bad weather?
The campus principal is going to initiate the information to the faculty and staff, and they use a variety of different ways of doing that, either through email, through Remind 101. Years ago, before those things existed, there was a phone calling tree that you would utilize. At the same time, when much like Mr. Clemente had mentioned, there's pre-planning. Whenever there's an opportunity or with weather, unlike some other situations, you might not have an idea. If and when there's a concern, then you would generally communicate to the faculty and staff to be listening for that kind of information, because of the high potential that there could be either a late start or even a cancellation. So you try to do that in advance, and then upon the time that the information comes officially from the district, then you are the point person for each and every campus to communicate that with the faculty and staff as quickly as you can when that information comes in.
Now, if there's bad weather rolling in the afternoon and a decision has to be made to cancel after-school activities, what is the role of a campus in making sure that kiddos are taken care of if after-school activities or games are canceled?
Well, I think that, again, depending on the age level and what activities, and from elementary with after-school programming, their YMCA programs, you coordinate with those. If you have bad weather rolling in and you have outside activities, you make decisions of student safety being paramount, and making sure that kids are in a safe location, and then communication, if it is after-school hours, of providing opportunities for students to contact their parents to make alternative arrangements, and trying to really stay ahead of it. I mean, we've had some issues where the weather we knew would worsen over time, and it was very important that we're able to make sure that as much travel could be completed before that occurred as possible. So it's very, very situational, but most importantly is just being aware that parents often have to travel long distances to get to school, so you make arrangements. Oftentimes, in those situations, we make sure that especially the faculty members and staff members that live further away from school are released as quickly as you can for them to get home safely. And you look for those staff members who live closer and have the opportunities, or those that don't have small children and have to go pick up, and you make those adjustments to make sure that everybody's taken care of.
And Gabby, with elementary school students, obviously very much dependent on adults when they're littler. What are the steps for an elementary school principal, especially when after-school activities are canceled?
So I'd say it's exactly what Mr. Yonkers was describing. It's very situational based on what happens. But especially if it's after-school care, it's typically an enrichment group or YMCA, so we're going to coordinate with whatever organization is hosted on our campus. Bottom line, student safety is first, so we're going to make sure that they're in a safe place and secure, and we're going to have staff and personnel with the children at all times. It's extremely critical that we keep all of the students' information updated at the campus level, phone numbers, email address, because our systems communicate with parents as soon as we have information to give. And so if we have the accurate phone numbers and email addresses, we can get communication out extremely quickly to families so that they know what the situation is, where students are housed, what our dismissal plan is.
So one way that parents can partner with schools to make sure that they're getting the best service when it comes to inclement weather is working with the registrars at the campuses
Yes.
to make sure everything's updated?
Yes, they should communicate with them if any changes happen.
And it's important to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, if an elementary school student, if there hasn't been contact made at home and things are canceled after school, if I'm supposed to be in YMCA, but it's canceled, we're not sending kids home if we're not sure there's an adult to receive
Absolutely
them.
not. We never dismiss students with a different plan than was communicated with us unless we've made contact with the family. So if the student's YMCA, then we're going to send them to YMCA because it's housed at our campus, but we're going to work in partnership with YMCA to make sure all communication gets out from the campus perspective and that YMCA activates their communication plan.
And it's important to note that when we cancel activities, correct, John? When we cancel activities, we cancel them, period. We're not keeping it open for one school. We're not making exceptions for a basketball game versus a PTA parent night at a campus.
That's correct. And there's lots of things that our buildings are utilized for outside of our control as well. But when we cancel activities, or we say that after 5 o'clock no activities can occur, which we sometimes make that decision based on weather, then that's for every and all activities.
Awesome. Fritz, when you're going and traveling the roads in the morning when there is inclement weather, are there any specific things that you're looking for when you're monitoring it, and how does your team kind of coordinate the widespread district that we have?
Well, what we do is we have two teams, because this last year we actually had 2 or 3 mornings in a row where if you're going out every morning, I go out every morning, but I have 2 teams, and that way they're not having to go every morning because it is a long day. But what we're looking for first, obviously, is looking at forecasts, seeing if there's any inclement weather moving in, looking, is there ice coming down? We start looking at guardrails, anything that's elevated above the ground, to start see if things are starting to freeze on that first. And then we will typically go to bridges and overpasses in areas that are prone to icing, and then get out and we do everything as safe as we can. We try to pull over, park, and then actually get out and physically walk some of these sidewalks and some of these bridges. Driving them is one thing, but walking them and actually seeing if there's ice is another. So those are a lot of things we look for when we're to kind of give us an idea if we think we're starting to have some icing issues.
And John, when we use a 2-hour delay, which is a tool that school districts use to be able to deal with the ever-changing weather patterns, what does that look like at a campus? Is it essentially just in terms of a bell schedule?
Well, I think again, it's situational, and we'll make adjustments over time, but for the most part, I know at the high school where we're on a block schedule, there's still it allows time for all the classes to meet, which is generally what we try to do. Because at the high school level, most of those classes only meet every other day. So for them to miss a day is difficult for everybody. So there are already prepared in advance bell schedules for a 2-hour delay, in which if that will occur, then it's ready to go. We shorten each one of the classes and possibly combine lunches when necessary, but I wouldn't say every time because there's other things that can occur. But for the most part, the goal at the high school is for all of the classes to meet. Again, those are decisions that are made, and that's why it's important that through the district website or the campus websites, that information is updated as quickly as it comes available. When we have known about a delay in advance, we put that information out to the community so the students know. There's a lot of factors with high school students, and it's one of the things most important to them is they want to know what classes am I going to have that day. Where do I report when I get there? I don't want to not be prepared for a class I didn't think was going to be offered. So, all that stuff happens, and we do our very best to be consistent in these situations. But keep it in mind, due to a lot of factors, that sometimes as much as you would like that to occur, it doesn't. But the information is put out, and one thing that I think all the schools do really well is at the moment somebody arrives at school, around the building, it's posted what today's bell schedule is going to be, so the students know where to report immediately and have an idea to adjust their day accordingly.
In an elementary school, what does a 2-hour delay look like?
So, again, just like John said, we have adjusted schedules for those days. We prepare in advance. We write these plans every year or revise them every year. So we may have an abbreviated schedule to still protect all instructional time and activities that happen on campus. It might be mirroring an early release schedule. It might just be abbreviated minutes per the day. Every campus will develop their own plan that are consistent and similar, but based on whatever the campus needs are. But it just means minute to minute is 2 hours later. So if your student arrives at school at 7:15, on a typical day, then they arrive at 9:15 on a 2-hour late start. If they arrive at 7:30 on a typical day, then it's 2 hours later at 9:30.
And that's to account for PPCD and pre-K
Yes.
programs that start all over at
Yeah.
different times.
And that's why I say there's a little bit of flexibility based on the campus needs, because we all have unique programs, and so our minutes are slightly different on every campus.
And John, I know you've been working with a team. Some legislation was passed in the 2015 legislative session regarding the move from the required instructional time for our campus has moved for a school district, for our school calendar, has moved from days to minutes. I know there's a lot of discussion on how that's going. Right now, the district, Round Rock ISD, is still continuing to use the use of bad weather days to make up for any missed days. But can you speak a little bit about what the direction is, what the district is at least talking about when it comes to instructional minutes versus days?
Yeah, I think, and it's fairly new information to us, but at one time, and it was that, your 180 instructional days was part of the plan for all students. There's some waivers that allow for more staff development to be built into that. But I think probably in relation to make-up days or schools that missed significant number of days, and making up day for day was very, very difficult. So what's been allowed now is that there's a minimum number of minutes, which in essence means that if you are able to have more than your 7-hour instructional day, or 75,600 minutes, I believe, total, that allows you a little bit more flexibility on how to make up those days, as opposed to having a day on a current holiday, or coming back at the very end of the school year, or even having school that some schools had to this last year, make up days in June on a Saturday and those kinds of things. So this provision allows the minutes to be made up rather than the days. The implication of that is something that we're addressing right now to see how that will benefit our communities the best. And I think that as we look at calendars and we look at the options that districts have when you have to lose instructional time due to weather issues, that there will be probably a different response going forward. But this is such a new area that I don't think we've completely looked at all the different avenues, because although it solves some of the problems, it creates some other problems. So we're just making sure that we understand it fully before we start building that necessarily into our calendars.
Awesome. So before we wrap up, if you guys want to think of a final thought to leave with our parents, remember our audience there is parents on the idea of inclement weather. I want to thank everyone for tuning in to this episode of Rock Talk. You can visit roundrockisd.org/Rock Talk and view all of our episodes. Mr. Klabundy, final thoughts on inclement weather? Any message you want to get out there to parents?
Final thoughts, just, if you hear the night before, the day before, we're going to have bad weather, just, keep tuned to local news stations and KLBJ. I believe that's just the radio station we communicate with. If you do have any questions, call transportation. There may be someone there. We typically have our dispatchers there. So if you have any questions, if it's a 2-hour delay, if you've got any questions, feel free to call. We're there to serve you.
Awesome.
Just knowing that student safety is paramount. We want to make sure that everyone gets to school safely and gets home safely, and we also want to protect our faculty and our community as well, knowing that it can be very dangerous if we misstep. So I think a lot of thought is given into making those decisions. There's a few things you can do. Make sure you subscribe to your campus e-news and district e-news, because that information is provided to you. Checking the websites are also very, very important. And then, just monitoring, as Ms. Nino had said, that as long as we have good email addresses and good phone numbers, that helps us as well as we're making those kinds of decisions. And, we're parents as well, and we want to make sure that everyone gets to school safely, and we make the decisions that are in the best interest of our students.
Gabby, any last thoughts?
Our students and community are, their safety is our first priority every day when we come to school. And so sometimes the weather has a huge impact on that. And the most important thing during these times is understanding that we have a plan in place, but it takes communication from everybody involved to roll out that plan and be flexible to make the plan work as it should. And so from the parents' standpoint and the community standpoint, please just make sure that you're communicating with the school. Make sure that information is updated, because we can't work with you if we can't access you. We can't communicate with you that your child is safe if we can't access you. So please make sure that you work with the school registrar or campus staff to make sure that we have the most updated information for you.
Well, thank you all for coming on this episode of Rock Talk. I think we had some good information for our parents.
Thank you.